Hi guys, this is Paul with Tweaktown. We're back here at Flash Memory Summit 2014. We're sitting down with David Woolf. He's a senior engineer at UNH-IOL. That is the University of New Hampshire Interoperability Labs. And they do a lot of work with Nvme, which is of course a very hot topic here at the show. So if you could kind of give us a little overview of what exactly you guys do in your labs.
Yeah, sure. So UNH-IOL, we're a third-party lab, nonprofit lab at University of New Hampshire, and we've got a really good partnership right now with the Nvme Express organization. The Nvme Express organization, they're the ones that wrote the specification. They've defined Nvme from day one, and we're working with them. Kind of think of us as like a testing arm for them. So we've put together a test program for them. We've written all of the test procedures for them, both on the interoperability side and on the conformance side. We've created some conformance test tools for them. We're running a whole series of plug fests, so products can come into our lab, we'll test them all together, verify their own interoperability. And the purpose of all of that is to prove the quality and the robustness of these products and ultimately see if they can qualify to be listed on an Nvme integrators list. And that's hosted by UNH-IOL.
And it's kind of important that that's vendor agnostic. You guys pretty much are kind of like a separate entity, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we're neutral, right? So, for a long time we've been referred to as like the Switzerland of data communications. So we don't have, we're not following any one company. We're there to try and help the community as a whole.
Nvme from a specification standpoint is pretty young right now. I mean, we're seeing some pretty refined devices. We have testing already posted to the site. And the devices themselves are refined, but the specification is changing moving forward. They're improving it. Could you give us an idea of some of those enhancements that have come along recently?
Yeah. I think one really important one has to do with reservations for Nvme devices. So, what people are expecting out of enterprise devices, especially when they compare it to like SaaS, there's a dual port there for SaaS. And the purpose of that is for redundancy. So if people are going to use Nvme devices in an enterprise environment, they're kind of expecting some of the same features and use cases as they've experienced with SaaS. So in newer versions of the Nvme specification, they've added features for reservations, for registering access to a device, unregistering it, clearing registrations to a device, to make sure that data doesn't get overwritten by two hosts trying to talk to the drive at the same time. So that wasn't there in the very beginning with Nvme, and it's a brand new spec, but that is a new feature that is in the latest revision of the Nvme specification. That's 1.1b now. So because that's a new feature and because it's something that's really important for using these products in the enterprise, that's something that we're going to be adding to our test program and probably be testing at our upcoming Plug Fest.
I think one of the interesting things for me, from my standpoint, is Nvme can be applied to a wide range of uses. Of course, PCIe is everywhere. So utilizing that as a host bus is a great idea, but you're going to get a lot of penetration into the enterprise market, of course, because that's where performance is key, but also with client applications. Now with client applications, there's going to be some issues such as power consumption that are going to be probably a little bit more important in those environments. Are there any new improvements in that area?
There are different, there's new sleep states that are added for Nvme, different power management states that have been added. So, and even, those are a concern on the client side. It's a concern on the enterprise side as well.
Yeah.
Another thing that's kind of interesting that's not necessarily addressed in the Nvme specification, but is something that we're going to see on the client side, is different form factors that are useful in the client side and maybe not as interesting in the enterprise side. So today, a lot of SSDs, they come in a chem card form factor. Mm-hmm. A lot of enterprise uses are interested in using the SFF 2.5-inch drive form factor. Mm-hmm. I think in the future on the client side, we're going to see a lot of SSDs using the M.2 form factor. Sometimes we call it the gum stick form factor because it's about the size of a stick of gum, but a very thin form factor that lets you clip in even the small things like even into tablets, small laptops, things like that.
Excellent. Another one of the great things about Nvme, and it's not apparent to a lot of people, is Nvme wasn't necessarily designed with any one type of media in mind. I mean, you can use DRAM, and in the future, we're going to see other PCM. How do you feel Nvme will scale with these future devices?
Yeah, that's one of the neat things about Nvme. In the past, when we think about storage access, it was designed for talking to spinning disk, right? So it's all block storage, and there's all kinds of, support and architecture in there for paying attention to sector size and cylinder this and things like that. NVMe is just talking about memory access, but it doesn't care what the architecture of that memory is. So, right now, obviously, NAND flash is a big thing for NVMe. That's how a lot of the drives are what they're using. But in the future, as new memory technologies come out, you can keep the NVMe interface. So, right now, there's a lot of learning that's going on in terms of how to use interface or use the NVMe interface. Admins are, coming up to speed on it, but there's still a lot of performance gains to come out of that interface as memory actually gets faster and different memory architectures are used.
So the speed of the NVMe interface is going to allow a lot of new changes, and of course the software stack is shortened quite a bit. Some of that is because of less commands used. I mean, you want to really minimize the amount of commands used. For instance, in SCSI, I think it's 32 different commands just for the read operation. So could you give us a little idea of how many commands there are in the NVMe?
Yeah, I don't even think there's 32 in the whole command set for NVMe. SCSI had to pay attention to all these different, when you mentioned the reads, all different sizes of reads, things like that. NVMe doesn't have to deal with that complexity, so it actually makes it a very streamlined, very efficient protocol.
Yeah, and SCSI kind of has some of that legacy baggage in there. I mean, it's been around for 15 years, so you guys can start from a fresh slate and really kind of redefine the future of storage. So that's pretty much the story coming out of UNH-IOL this year.
Right.
And we appreciate your time.
All right,
thanks for stopping by the booth.